So this week, once again, I will be speaking to the subject Nigeria and the enduring tragedy of myopic leadership. Now, if you look at that topic, you'll find very quickly that the one subject of the one word that is in need of definition is the word myopic. The word myopic comes from the word myopia, and it speaks to a person lacking in foresight or intellectual insight, someone who is unwilling or unable to act prudently, who is short-sighted, who is lacking in foresight or understanding, and who is narrow-minded. The point I'm making is that Nigeria has had to endure a long line of myopic rulers. I have spoken variously to the fact that Nigeria is lacking in leadership, and that the most charitable word that might be used in describing those who have been saddled with the affairs of Nigeria is to call them rulers. But even rulers have tended to be visionary, but the ones who ruin Nigeria are better described as ruiners, only thinking or caring about things that are happening now or are related to a particular group. That is what generally defines myopic persons. So you find that from inception, Nigeria has been generally ruined by persons who have almost always focused on narrow, selfish, short-sighted interests, even when their interests have not been completely selfish, as in focused on themselves and their immediate family, which has led to the coinage of words such as prebendal. What you find is that they focus on ethnic groups or they focus on religious groups. And in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society like ours, a focus on narrow interest has always been at the cost of the Commonwealth. So what you find is that almost all of the time, those who have been saddled with the task of superintending the Nigerian state have been persons who have concerned themselves only with very narrow issues, narrow interests, and have ignored and neglected or even sacrificed the Commonwealth and what is good for all. Now, the extent of the ruination of a people that takes place when their rulers or ruiners are focused on narrow interest is that they lose the most important ingredient of leadership, which is vision. If you go into the Bible, particularly if you look at Habakkuk at chapter 2, specifically verse 3, it says the vision is for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it. Write it down. Make it plain that those who read it might run with it. What does this mean? The most important thing in that biblical verse is the phrase appointed time. Appointed time speaks to a futuristic moment, a time in the future in which the visionary is not living. So you find a man who looks at a desert, and in looking at the desert, he comes up with the need to provide shade from the blaring sun of the desert. So he thinks of planting trees. In some cases, they plant date trees, which takes years before it grows to maturity. But they think of planting trees. The person planting the tree is not forgetful of the fact that he might not even live long enough to see the fruit germinate, but he plants them in the knowledge that they will grow. Now, my partner in the law office, when I was there, who is now the head of that practice, Raf Nwoke, once gave me an Igbo proverb, and that proverb translated says that the elder who desires to sit underneath the shade of the mango tree in his old age plants them in his youth. Now, I once had occasion to speak with a friend, Tokumbo Amusu, who was describing a scene that took place in Dubai. So he met this Nigerian who was posted to Dubai in the 80s. When the man got to Dubai in the 80s, he met the Dubai airport that was nowhere near as good as our Muritala Mohammed II. That's where Air Peace flies from today, not even the main international airport. It was just an aerodrome. But this was also a time that coincided with the beginning of the reign of the current ruler of Dubai. And the man coming onto the throne desired, envisioned a Dubai that will become the regional aviation hub. He desired a Dubai that will become a holiday destination. He desired a Dubai that will become the financial hub of the Middle East. He desired a Dubai that would be the technological hub of the Middle East. On the strength of that vision, the man constrained the resources of the kingdom and he built towards his vision. So today, Dubai is what it is on the back of the strength of the vision of the man that was saddled with ruling it. Remember, Dubai is not a democracy. It does not pretend to be a democracy. It is an hereditary monarchy. But in spite of the fact that Dubai is ruled, it is not led by a democracy. The ruler of Dubai was visionary in outlook, and because of his visionary outlook, he envisioned a future in which Dubai is today living. That is the extent and power of vision. Now, in contradistinction, you look to the Nigerian reality and you find, as I recorded in my book, Do Not Die in Their War, particularly in the chapter that I titled Aremu the Lion Cub, General Obasanjo was gifted this lion. He named the lion Aremu. Of course, you know, is one thing you cannot take away from Obasanjo is his planet-sized ego. So he named the lion Aremu after himself. But the dangerous part of this story and the tragedy of the story I'm telling is that having named the lion Aremu, Aremu of Ota promptly built a cage, an enclosure within the Obasanjo Presidential Library complex, measuring no more than 3 meters by 3, and he kept this lion cub in that enclosure. That lion cub grew to become a grown lion, a male. I went to Obasanjo Presidential Library in company of my wife because I wanted to see what the man had built in his private space, having witnessed his failure to build the Nigerian state. So when I witnessed what he had built in his private space and I saw the constraint with which this lion was living, I realized at the time that the biggest problem of the Nigerian system and the Nigerian state is the limited wisdom and vision and the capacity for envisioning that afflicts those who pretend to rule Nigeria. Whatever else you may want to say about General Obasanjo, he remains one of the most intelligent of the lot that has ruled Nigeria. If Obasanjo, as intelligent as he is, could not even bring himself to remember that the cub will grow into a lion one day, will require by far more space than the one into which he had been constrained, what then do you expect from the more sybaritic and less intelligent ones that have ruled Nigeria? So the problem of Nigeria is the complete absence of the capacity for visioning, the pimpish imagination of those who have been saddled with the task of leading her, but who have failed to lead her and who have equally failed to rule her because of their inability to envision a future. They've been so focused on the present that they have forgotten to look to the future. Nigeria, from the pre-colonial days up until the present day, from Gowon down to Tinubu, have been ruled largely by persons who are completely fixated on their creature comfort and who are not saddled with any pretense at visioning. Now, to be visionary, you have to be acquainted with the fact of your mortality. You have to be able to understand that your life is but a moment in time, and that what you are doing would become part and parcel of history tomorrow. The unfortunate thing is that those who have ruled and ruined this country have never managed to remember the fact of their mortality, and being unable to remember that they will die one day, they have rarely ever envisioned the future and built towards it. You have to also be able to plan beyond your own lifetime, understanding that if it is truly visionary, your lifetime will never be enough to achieve the goal. You can only lay the foundation blocks for the future that you see. Let me give you an example. One of the most vociferous critics of our last electoral cycle has been Olusegun Obasanjo. But the question that should be asked is this: when Obasanjo was saddled with the task of superintending elections in Nigeria, what kind of elections did he superintend? Imagine that Obasanjo had found the grace to superintend elections that had credibility. How much easier would it have been for him to speak creditably and credibly about the putrefaction of the entire system, the rot in the judiciary, the complete compromise of INEC? How much more credibly would he have been able to speak? But his ability to speak to these things were compromised because he lived in the moment, completely incapable or unable to even envision a future in which his own actions will become reference point for the very things that he sought to criticize. America and the West will tell us about how brutal the regime in Korea, South Korea, and North Korea is. But think about it. Kim Jong-un and his father before him envisioned a nuclear North Korea, and they've achieved it today. The one thing you cannot say about the North Koreans is that they have any problems with engineering. They have all kind of rocket science. They have all kind of thermonuclear warfare devices that they have built because they constrained the resources of their republic towards achieving the vision, however much you might quarrel with the vision. To achieve anything of significance, you must be able to think in a futuristic manner. Look at Nigeria and the rail system that we have built. To build the rail system that we have built, we have not at any point thought in a futuristic manner. The Nigerian rail system is something that had been built in more advanced countries since the 50s and 60s. To go to Ibadan from Lagos, you need 2 hours, 40 minutes. This is the same distance that in some country would not take more than 30, 45 minutes at the most. So instead of building for the future, we have built what was in the past. We're copying. There is nothing original about our rail system, but we are not even copying what is modern and what is new. We are simply copying what used to be in the past. And we are incurring huge debts in order to achieve this. The absence of vision has provoked a situation where we have dissipated our commonwealth. A country where the rulers are able to envision would not be one where you are building a coastal road from Lagos to Calabar at the cost of 4 billion naira for a kilometer. It shouldn't be. It wouldn't be. The only thing that has proven to be futuristic about the ruiners of Nigeria has been their capacity to steal. Yaya Bello was paying school fees 10 years ahead of time from stolen commonwealth. If instead of stealing this money, he had built schools that his own children would be able to attend years after he had left the government house, we will not be having a situation where the white lion will become the white mouse. But this is where we are as a people because of a failure to envision. The absence of vision promotes sybaritic obsessions. You find that in the absence of vision, which because vision constrains resources. If you go back to Habakkuk 2, verse 3, he says, the vision is for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it. So there is a part where you are denying yourself because you are focused on vision. Write it down, make it plain, that those who read it might run with it. For them to read it and run with it, one of the first things that they would have to do is to constrain their resources. When you know that you are building for the future, you do not dissipate the wealth in the moment. You keep that wealth in the knowledge that you have more important things to do with that money. You don't go buying jeeps. Progressively, the Nigerian legislative arm have bought itself creature comfort, and the poorer the country has become, the more refined their sybaritic taste have equally become. They have not focused on the future because they are too busy consuming in the moment. A country that does not have money to spend on education, it was meant to set aside 5 billion for education, for the loans board, student loans board. That same country has spent 90 billion on Hajj subsidy. The country that cannot build healthcare facility has 90 billion to spend on Hajj. And as they are spending on Hajj, you can be sure that they will spend on Christian pilgrimage to Lebanon. Most of the time, the Jews in Israel, they don't even want to see us. They are not welcoming of Christian pilgrims. But you take that money, you take it to Jordan, you take it to Lebanon, and yet you do not have the money to spend on more important things like education. Education, not only just education for the sake of it, education for a purpose. Because look, whatever you look at in Nigeria, you will find nothing visionary about the way we have spent. We have spent living in the moment. We have not constrained the resources of the people to the achievement of vision because there is no vision governing the exertions of our people. The first time I entered the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, otherwise known as IITA, the first thing that struck me on entering the place is how the place looked so much like Houston in the United States. They took our own country, a portion of Ibadan, right there at Idiose, and they futuristically built, laid it out, so much so that when you step outside the precinct of the IITA and you come out at a DOC, it's almost like you are coming out of paradise and you are entering hell. That is the difference between vision and ajambaku. Ajambaku meaning nothing of consequence, nothing is planned, nothing is envisioned, everything is just free for all. The madness that you see all around you in Nigeria is because we are not constrained by any vision. We have not been led by men of vision. We have been led, ruined by men whose sole preoccupation are their creature comfort, their carnal appetite, and a complete absence of visioning. So I've come by this week essentially to speak to you about the enduring idiocy and tragedy of the absence of visionary leadership in the Nigerian space. This is new for me. I'm having to pre-record my message to you, the spontaneity of our exchange is lost, and I'm having to learn all over. But I'll get there. This might also be presenting new opportunities, and it's showing me new ways of doing it. Thank you for giving me your time this week. I'm sure we'll get better by the time we're meeting next week. Have you beautiful weeks ahead of you, and God bless you all. Amen.